Hello, everybody, and welcome to highlights from the Week 10 Battle Royales that determine the final playoff spots, seedings, etc. in the Eastern and Central divisions of the Pro Chess League. Before we get into who finished where in the league and the best games from it, I just got to take a moment to say something was wrong with some of these players this day because the openings just looked like they had taken, mind-altering medications or something. Because look at this from Miguel Admiral playing white against Anahuel Jules Moussard. He starts with c3. Bizarre. Moussard says, you know what? I'm going to put my bishop on g7. That c-pawn looks really tasty. What? h4 next? What? Just absolute complete nonsense. Then he tries to hold on to this pawn on c5 while sacking his h-pawn on this side of the board. All right, and then proceeds to try and defend this pawn on c5. The whole game is just pretty weird in this one, but the opening is the weirdest. Check out another typical opening for this day, as Pavel Pankratov kicks things off with knight to a3, which you may not know is sometimes called the sodium attack in American circles because of Na being the chemical symbol for sodium. Anyway, then he's like, just forgets his knight's on a3 and starts playing normal moves, like with his knight over on a3. Absolutely bonkers and silly. Here's another one. This time Pankratov is black, and white has just played g3, looking to fianchetto his bishop. That's all he needs. That's the flag for Pankratov. You move to fianchetto any bishop, and he's sending the rook for it. This time, Nikita Meshkov's Grandmaster First Second is on the same page as him, throws h4 in, and yeah, just absolutely weird, stupid stuff. Coincidentally, however, this game eventually turned into probably the best game of the week in the Central and Eastern Thursday Battle Royales. Here, Nikita plays a very strong idea, c5, blocking this bishop off from the dark squares in the center of the board. The bishop would soon be traded, leading to this position where the bishop on f4 becomes strong. Very reasonably, he trades the queen while he comes into these dark squares. And, some moves later, you see white dominating the e file because the black rooks were disconnected. And with this bishop that can't be contested, controlling these squares, you want to see how weak the dark squares are. Black's got pawns only on light squares as well, so it's really serious. Here comes a rook sack. Check here. Yeah, the minor pieces can do that without the queen. Checkmate. Those are some weak dark squares, huh? Black controls like 0 of them, pretty much. I got one more just random smacko for you. Here is International Master Rafa Nadal, or Tsidiapov, playing white against Grandmaster Dmitry Frolyanov, who notices that white's got like just no pieces on the king side, no intention to bring any pieces there either. He just starts transferring his queen this way, and white's like, maybe there's something on the queen side. Look over there. So he just plops a piece into f3. You may have seen this before. Once you plop a piece into f3, the f2 pawn can't move. That means reserves for white can't get to that area. And since white has no pieces on the king side, that means there's going to be nobody there except, 1 or 2 pawns for a second. Tries to throw a piece onto the king side somehow, right? Yeah, she wanted to come here anyway. You're welcome to the rook. If king takes rook f3, would crush, attacking the queen and threatening queen h3 check with mates. So it just takes the rook, the bishop just comes back, and white resigns facing queen g5, queen g6, and queen h3, all of which would mate, none of which are defendable. So now, let's get to the main event for the Eastern Division. The main event for the Eastern Division was Armenia Eagle, defending champions of the Pro Chess League, and Tbilisi Gentlemen, the top team in the league all year long on points. They clash in the final round of the Battle Royale, and they're tied with 16 points each. Whichever team wins this final one-match, 4-on-4, 10-minute chess, will come out on top in the Battle Royale and in the division. And I would characterize this match as just absolutely intense. And I'm going to just show you a couple clips from these games, which each deserve to be looked at in depth, to give you a sense of just how intense this match was. Here you've got Zayvin Andreassian with white, and he is ready to fight here. He smacks through with knight f5. This is super well calculated and deep. The follow-up is e6, opening up the bishop to the rook on h8, which is defended by the knight, but which is the reason why white couldn't just win with, rook c8 check, rook c8, king e7, rook h8. It's because the rook's defended. So first white sacks the knight, hits him up with e6, trades this piece off here, and then hits him with rook c8. Okay, so now he's going to pick up the knight on h8 maybe if the rooks trade, but first king f7. Okay, he's got to trade and then check with the queen in order to get in here with the rook, attacking a8, h8, and threatening queen e8. So knight g6, white's going to pick up that piece and come up with the material advantage. Black strikes back with g3, and what's amazing is like white's like hitting black with these tactics, and black's like hanging in there just enough and fighting back. And this game would eventually be won by Ponsulaya. And the match eventually would go to his team, the Tbilisi Gentlemen. They end up first. Check out the intensity in this game as well. Here, Haik Martirosyan or Mkhitaryan playing black against Luka Pakhadze. Just have the knight. I'm opening up your king. Blocks with the rook to sack the rook rather than taking with the queen and on bishop g5 running away and allowing bishop b3, rook d2, and just all the black pieces being active. Instead, he'd rather just put his rook there in the way, make a nice strong center, keep the opponent's pieces at bay. This game gets just like intensely sick, and eventually Paikadze prevails as well. All right, on to the All-Stars. The All-Stars on these teams are to some extent they're board 3 and 4 players. Here you've got Shant Sargsyan against Giga Chuparadze. These are like the best performing board 3s pretty much, other than Dobrov, but 2 of the top performing board 3s in the league. Shant is the top one, the lower rated one, but the top one, and here he comes out on top as well. He's got his rook on the 7th rank, knight on b5. This d-pawn's really strong, so despite the bad bishop, it seems he's got a near winning positional advantage. But how do you turn something like this into something concrete? It's a little bit tricky, but look at this sweet thing he does. He threatens knight d6, queen d6, f4, winning a piece because of the e8 rook. So black defends the rook, and then he plays queen e4, saying, hey, I'll just come into h7, hang out for a little bit, maybe visit h8 with checkmate. So Giga tries to keep him out. Now he gets contact with the pawn. He's able to weaken things a little bit. He's offering the queen trade because that would break the blockade of the bishop on d6. And sadly, black, whose king is a little bit worrisome, actually can't afford to survive the queen trade either in the endgame because of the d5 pawn. So a couple more moves happen, and the white queen finally gets into h7, which should lead to checkmate, but there's a wild flurry of checks before it ends. Super, super intense, as we said. On board 4, it is Volkovi. So that was 1 point for the Eagles, but on board 4, it's Volkovi who asserts dominance as the most valuable player in the league this entire season, probably, and certainly the best board 4. Here he takes on Artak Manukyan, overperforming manager and player for the Eagles. And he honestly just rolled over him this game. This King's Indian, he just played the e5, winning a pawn on d6 very simply. And everything he did this game was actually pretty easy, I would say. Here it's just f5 using the duo of pawns. He trades and hits up f7. And even if black defends, he takes, opening up queen and rook, and you can see f7's a goner. Knight f7 wins the rook, so black chooses to defend like that. Now black's down 3 pawns. And Volkovi, that was the one game that wasn't too intense. It was a walk in the park for the best 4th board in the league. And yeah, that leaves the gentleman on top. Moving on to the Central Division. In the Central Division, the Marseille Migraines were chasing the Caen Blitzstream for the last playoff spot. And their board 4, unfortunately, did not show up, forfeited all the games. There's no telling how many points he could have gotten had he been there, because he would have been one of the lower rated board 4s, but it would have taken about 2 points from him according to my calculations, for the Migraines to actually catch up and get and maybe wrest that playoff spot from Caen, because their top 3 all performed well, but without a board 4 they just can't quite do it. Caen stays ahead of them in the Battle Royale and in the playoff hunt, and you will not be seeing MVL next week in the playoffs. Who you will definitely be seeing for the playoffs is the Norway Gnomes, who continue to win just everything for the Central Division. I mean, they're good, but they're like surprisingly good to their good. Tor Fredrik Kassen, they had a new player come in this week. He scored 6 out of 6 points, perfect in his debut. So there's another asset for a team that was already first, right? Here he is with a nice little promotion tactic. He just opposite colored bishops. This isn't going to be a draw because nobody can stop this D pawn. Rook takes bishop, D2, right? E1's covered by the pawn, and the rook that's hanging is luckily preventing rook to D3. In fact, he's preventing bishop to F3 because he would take the rook, right? So everything's in the right place. Rook F3 check, a nice little trap. If you trade off that rook, then after bishop F3, you lose. So he has to move the king, leave the rook hanging. Rook F1, covering D1, rook C1. And that's it. Beautiful little promotion tactic. Take note of that one. Kassen could also do it in other ways. Obviously, you win 6 games in a row. You win them with different abilities and techniques. Here he shows the good old knight to D5 in the Sicilian. And hopefully you know about this by now, but with the rook on E1, knight D5, if black takes, their king comes under brutal attack. What they should do is just castle in this case, since the knight's not attacking their queen or anything. Maybe he thought his queen was on C7, but he should not have opened this up. And Tor Fredrik just smacks him down for this. Now bishop G7, deflecting the king from the bishop on E7, comes in, trades that, check, coming for F7. Defending F7 the only way he can. Pawn takes D5 is not the way to do it. Rook to D1 is. If bishop to E6, he could just take it with his rook. He could also double the other rook on D7 and just insist on checkmating on F7. So it was sacrificed, and white went on to win after a little bit of wildness here. He's got to throw in queen H6 to cover the back rank mate on C1, and then he can capture the queen. And yeah, Fredrik saw it all. Of course, he had some help to score, 20 points. Baden-Baden, who I thought would win and who came second with 19 points, did score enough points to win most battle royales. Their fans could not be disappointed with 19 points, but somehow the Gnomes scored 20 points, and that's because Tor Fredrik Kassen had plenty of help. Here's his buddy Larso with black, beating the heck out of white, probably in more than one way at this point, but here's a nice way to do it. Boom! Rook takes E3. If the queen takes, then knight C4 can pick up the queen. If the pawn takes, then check here, knight E3. And again, the king can't stay on the queen, and the queen is lost. So the Gnomes rack them up and go into the playoffs as probably a heavy favorite in the Central after this last week's performance. But, Baden-Baden also looked quite good with their second place. And one other notable result was a strong third place from the Berlin Bears, who avoid relegation and pass the Barcelona Raptors with a third place ahead of 2 other playoff-bound teams. So those are your highlights. You want to see more, check out the YouTube channel of the Pro Chess League for some Pro Chess lessons where we've taken in-depth look at some of the most instructive moments in these games. And, look forward to finding out which teams are actually the best as they go through these grueling elimination knockout playoff matches in the next couple weeks, finishing with the Final Four live.